Just bear with me. I'm just double checking the math. So I am going to send you back with just a very minor instruction, and I'm sorry for this, but I just want to make sure that we cross all the T's and dot all the I's. And as Attorney Pattis had pointed out, I had asked you, you probably don't remember now because it was days ago, just to have the four-person initial each page as well as sign. Also, I don't see any decimal points, and that's fine. It's consistent throughout, so we can leave it at that. So by that, I mean there's no decimal point 00, but that is fine. I just wanted to point that out. All right, so we will send the jury back in with that, and then when you're ready, we'll come back out.
So we have been listening to the judge in the second defamation trial against Alex Jones, and the six-person jury has come up with a verdict on two separate damage amounts. However, the judge is sending it back just to make sure everything has been taken care of. It looks as if they just need to initial some papers.
Literally cross the T's and dot the I's.
Yeah.
The big question we're all waiting for the answer to is, how much will Alex Jones have to pay? We'll just wait a moment as the paperwork is completed and the jury comes out. We have Jessica Levinson. She's our CBS News legal contributor and a professor at Loyola Law School, also listening as we stand by. Jessica, tell us, you know, I know that the prosecutors wanted Alex Jones to pay something like $500 million because he got 550 million impressions from the lies he told about the shooting. What can we expect here in the next few moments?
So probably something lower. You know, when that happened, I thought back to that old Don Henley song, "Lawyers Dwell on Small Details." And that's basically what's happening right now. We're all just waiting with bated breath to see exactly what's going to happen. This, of course, as you highlight, is just about damages, because Alex Jones in this case and in other cases defaulted, basically did not participate, did not respond to any part of the complaints that were filed in other states. This is not about liability for defamation, invasion of privacy, violation of state unfair business practices. It's just about basically two types of damages here. The first type is compensatory, which is exactly what it sounds like. Basically, how much are we going to compensate you to try to make you whole for the harassment that occurred as a result of these heinous acts? And then the second question is, will there be punitive damages? In this case, punitive damages, again, are exactly what they sound like, which is we want to not just try and make the plaintiff whole, but we actually want to try and punish Alex Jones, because what he did is so outside the bounds of what we want to tolerate. We want to punish him and we want to deter others. And so we're really looking for those two figures here. As I understand it, based on the jury instructions, the judge said, basically, come back to me based on two different buckets of the causes of action, defamation and the emotional distress. And so that's what we're going to be looking at in a few moments.
And what do you make? It took them 3 days to deliberate and come up with this. So what do you make of that time?
So I think, you know, obviously nobody knows because we weren't in the jury room. All we know is that they didn't all walk in there and say, yes, 500 or 550. And they were probably deciding both, my guess is both between how much was appropriate for compensatory And was it appropriate to say, yes, in this case, we want punitive damages on one or both of the different causes of action here that the judge asked for verdicts on, for amounts on, excuse me.
What's so fascinating about what the jury has to do here, based on what you've just laid out, is effectively put a dollar amount on pain. I don't know what number would satisfy these relatives of victims at all. How does a juror do that?
With guidance. I mean, that's a great question, which is obviously individually, this is different for everybody. Everybody suffers emotional distress and the harm of a defamation case in different ways. But we do have rubrics. Defamation deals with reputational harm, emotional distress. We can ask, for instance, did they have to seek help for the emotional distress? Did they have to see a psychologist or a psychiatrist? Did they have to go to the doctor? What were the additional monetary damages that they incurred? And so this is not, while it's obviously a hugely publicized case, it's not Connecticut's first case when it deals with trying to figure out, how do we thread that needle? How do we find that right amount? And the truth is, there is no magic calculation. It's really the jurors going back into that room and saying, well, I think this is about right based on these guiding factors.
And just to update our viewers now, if you're just tuning in, a verdict has been reached in the Alex Jones defamation trial. However, when the jury brought in the verdict, the judge asked them to go back and just do some little,
Clerical corrections to make sure everything's proper. Jessica Levinson, our legal analyst, is here discussing likely what's gone into this decision making. The plaintiffs really want hundreds of millions of dollars. Alex Jones has already been found guilty in other cases having to do with the lies he has spread. But the reality is, even though he's been kicked off a lot of platforms, he is said to be worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Jessica, should something like that even factor into the jury's decision making?
So I think certainly when it comes to the issue of punitive damages, so when it comes to compensatory damages, I think we're really focused on the plaintiffs, the victims in this case, the people who won against Alex Jones. And we're asking, to what extent were they harmed? When it comes to punitive, we're focusing more on the defendant, more on Alex Jones, asking, what would hurt him? And what would send a message, frankly, to other people, other would-be Alex Joneses? And in that case, it is fair for us to say he's an incredibly wealthy man, he's still making money, and what would, as punitive damages indicate, what would punish him? What would cause him to feel a monetary pain here? So in some circumstances, it doesn't matter what the defendant's wealth is, but in this case, I do think it matters.
All right, Jessica, thank you so much. Stay with us throughout the day as we continue to get more updates on this. We are going to continue to watch to see when the verdict comes back. We will be right back.
Stay with us.
An original CBS Reports documentary.
Yoga and wellness has become a place of anti-science.
Online clickbait.
The algorithms feed you content based upon your own fantasy.
Potentially at my peril.
There's no question about it.
Spreading digital disinformation.
Their entire yoga studio and spiritual community got so embedded in all of the QAnon stuff that it became this sick place.
Why pro-health people are fertile ground for anti-science messages.
We can just go into the whole mask thing. A lot of us just believe that's symbolism for silencing people.
People are locked in this mindset. They've been taught to accept what the medical doctors say.
No longer are you going to be willing to take any medical advice.
It's a big problem that we urgently need to address.
An original CBS Reports documentary streaming now. An original CBS Reports documentary.
We need to put an end to this territorial status.
Will statehood create a better Puerto Rico?
So that we have the same quality of life that you see in the States.
What do you worry about?
Me living here in the future?
They're giving incentives to non-Puerto Ricans to come to Puerto Rico
and extract our natural resources and take over our land.
Vacation in Puerto Rico, and in exchange for that, you don't pay taxes.
Why would I allow somebody who abused me for 123 years to then consume me?
An original CBS Reports documentary, streaming now.
When weather turns extreme,
massive and rapidly intensifying hurricane,
every second counts.
Hurricane Fiona slams Puerto Rico with flooding and power outages.
CBS News and the Weather Channel bringing virtual weather technology so advanced, so real.
Well over 9 feet. This is not survivable.
You'll have time to get prepared.
You want to have the advantage on severe weather days.
It just may save your life.
Feel the forecast. Weather.
We have breaking news in Connecticut. A verdict has been reached in the Alex Jones defamation trial.
Let's listen to the amount jurors believe Alex Jones will have to pay.
And you put the decimal points in. All right, Mr. Farrell. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, please listen to your verdict as it is read. Verdict. We, the jury, have reached our verdict as to damages in this case. We award damages to each plaintiff and against Alex Jones and Free Speech Systems, LLC, as follows. Roman numeral 1, compensatory damages. Instructions. Fill in both numbers for each plaintiff, then go to section 2. Please enter your damages assessments for each plaintiff on the lines below. To plaintiff Robbie Parker. A, defamation/slander damages past and future, $60 million. B, emotional distress damages past and future, $60 million. Total fair, just, and reasonable damages to plaintiff Robert Parker and against Alex Jones and Free Speech Systems, and line A and line B, total $120 million, initialed by juror number 1. To plaintiff David Wheeler. A, defamation/slander damages past and future, $25 million. B, emotional distress damages past and future, $30 million. Total fair, just, and reasonable damages to plaintiff David Wheeler and against Alex Jones and Free Speech Systems, add line A and line B, $55 million, initialed by juror number 1. To plaintiff Francine Wheeler. A, defamation/slander damages past and future, $24 million. B, emotional distress damages past and future, $30 million. Total fair, just, and reasonable damages to plaintiff Francine Wheeler and against Alex Jones and Free Speech Systems, add line A and line B, total $54 million, initialed by juror number 1. To plaintiff Jacqueline Barden. A, defamation/slander damages past and future, $10 million. B, emotional distress damages past and future, $18,800,000. Total fair, just, and reasonable damages to plaintiff Jacqueline Barden and against Alex Jones and Free Speech Systems, add line A and line B, $28,800,000, initialed by juror number 1. To plaintiff Mark Barden. A, defamation/slander damages past and future, $25 million. B, emotional distress damages past and future, $32,600,000. Total fair, just, and reasonable damages to plaintiff Mark Barden and against Alex Jones and Free Speech Systems, add line A and line B, $57,600,000, initialed by juror number 1. To plaintiff Nicole Hockley. A, defamation/slander damages past and future, $32 million. B, emotional distress damages, past and future, $41,600,000. Total fair, just, and reasonable damages to plaintiff Nicole Hockley and against Alex Jones and Free Speech Systems, add line A and line B, $73,600,000. Initialed by initialed by juror number 1. To plaintiff Ian Hockley. A, defamation/slander damages, past and future, $38 million. B, emotional distress damages, past and future, $43,600,000. Total fair, just, and reasonable damages to plaintiff Ian Hockley and against Alex Jones and Free Speech Systems, add line A and line B, $81,600,000, initialed by juror number 1. To plaintiff Jennifer Hensel. A, defamation/slander damages, past and future, $21 million. B, emotional distress damages, past and future, $31 million. Total fair, just, and reasonable damages to plaintiff Jennifer Hensel and against Alex Jones and Free Speech Systems, add line A and line B, $52 million, initialed by juror number 1. To plaintiff Donna Soto. A, defamation/slander damages, past and future, $18 million. B, emotional distress damages, past and future, $30 million. Total fair, just, and reasonable damages to plaintiff Donna Soto and against Alex Jones and Free Speech Systems, add line A and line B, $48 million, initialed by juror number 1. To plaintiff Carly Soto Parisi. A, defamation/slander damages, past and future, $30 million. B, emotional distress damages, past and future, $36 million. Total fair, just, and reasonable damages to plaintiff Carly Soto Parisi and against Alex Jones and Free Speech Systems, add line A and line B, $66 million, initialed by juror number 1. To plaintiff Carlos Matthew Soto. A, defamation/slander damages, past and future, $18,600,000. B, emotional distress damages, past and future, $39 million. Total fair, just, and reasonable damages to plaintiff Carlos Matthew Soto and against Alex Jones and Free Speech Systems, add line A and line B, $57,600,000, initialed by juror number 1. To plaintiff Jillian Soto Marino. A, defamation/slander damages, past and future, $30 million. B, emotional distress damages, past and future, $38,800,000. Total fair, just, and reasonable damages to plaintiff Jillian Soto Marino and against Alex Jones and Free Speech Systems, add line A and line B, $68,800,000, initialed by juror number 1. To plaintiff William Aldenberg. Defamation/slander damages, past and future, $45 million. B, emotional distress damages, past and future, $45 million. Total fair, just, and reasonable damages to plaintiff William Aldenberg and against Alex Jones and Free Speech Systems, add line A and line B, $90 million, initialed by juror number 1. To plaintiff Erica Lafferty. A, defamation/slander damages, past and future, $18 million. B, emotional distress damages, past and future, $58 million. Total fair, just, and reasonable damages to plaintiff Erica Lafferty and against Alex Jones and Free Speech Systems, add line A and line B, $76 million, initialed by juror number 1. To plaintiff William Sherlach. A, defamation/slander damages, past and future, $9 million. B, emotional distress damages, past and future, $27 million. Total fair, just, and reasonable damages to plaintiff William Sherlach and against Alex Jones and Free Speech Systems, add line A and line B, $36 million, initialed by juror number 1. Number 2, award of attorney's fees and costs. Instructions, check yes or no. If you check yes, the judge will determine the amount due to the plaintiff for reasonable attorney's fees and costs, and will then award the plaintiff plaintiffs that amount at a later date. If you check no, the judge will award $1 to the plaintiffs for their attorney's fees and costs. We, the jury, find that the standard charge for the assessment of attorney's fees and costs have been met. Yes, it's checked. Reasonable attorney's fees and costs to be awarded by the judge at a later date, initialed by juror number 1. And the last page is the four-person juror number 1 signature in the date of 10/12/2022, also initialed by juror number 1.
The verdict may be accepted and recorded.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, please listen to your verdict as it has been accepted and recorded. No, all right. Verdict. We, the jury, have reached our verdict as to damages in this case. We award damages to each plaintiff and against Alex Jones and Free Speech Systems, LLC as follows. Number 1, compensatory damages. Instructions. Fill in both numbers for each plaintiff, then go to section 2. Please enter your damages assessments for each plaintiff on the lines below. To plaintiff Robert Parker, A, defamation/slander damages past and future, $60 million. B, emotional distress damages past and future, $60 million. Total fair, just, and reasonable damages to plaintiff Robert Parker and against Alex Jones and Free Speech Systems, add line A and line B, $120 million, initialed by juror number 1. To plaintiff David Wheeler, A, defamation/slander damages past and future, $25 million. B, emotional distress damages past and future, $30 million. Total fair, just, and reasonable damages to plaintiff David Wheeler and against Alex Jones and Free Speech Systems, add line A and line B, $55 million, initialed by juror number 1. To plaintiff Francine Wheeler, A, defamation/slander damages past and future, $24 million. B, emotional distress damages past and future, $30 million. Total fair, just, and reasonable damages to plaintiff Francine Wheeler and against Alex Jones and Free Speech Systems, add line A and line B, $54 million, initialed by juror number 1. To plaintiff Jacqueline Barden, A, defamation/slander damages past and future, $10 million. B, emotional distress damages past and future, $18,800,000. Total fair, just, and reasonable damages to plaintiff Jacqueline Barden and against Alex Jones and Free Speech Systems, add line A and line B, $28,800,000, initialed by juror number 1. To plaintiff Mark Barden, A, defamation/slander damages past and future, $25 million. B, emotional distress damages past and future, $32,600,000. Total fair, just, and reasonable damages to plaintiff Mark Barden and against Alex Jones and Free Speech Systems, add line A and line B, $57,600,000, initialed by juror number 1. To plaintiff Nicole Hockley, A, defamation/slander damages past and future, $32 million. B, emotional distress damages past and future, $41,600,000. Total fair, just, and reasonable damages to plaintiff Nicole Hockley and against Alex Jones and Free Speech Systems, add line A and line B, $73,600,000, initialed by juror number 1. To plaintiff Ian Hockley, A, defamation/slander damages past and future, $38 million. B, emotional distress damages past and future, $43,600,000. Total fair, just, and reasonable damages to plaintiff Ian Hockley and against Alex Jones and Free Speech Systems, add line A and line B, $81,600,000, initialed by juror number 1. To plaintiff Jennifer Hensel, A, defamation/slander damages past and future, $21 million. B, emotional distress damages past and future, $31 million. Total fair, just, and reasonable damages to plaintiff Jennifer Hensel and against Alex Jones and Free Speech Systems, add line A and line B, $52 million, initialed by juror number 1. To the plaintiff Donna Soto, A, defamation/slander damages past and future, $18 million. B, emotional distress damages past and future, $30 million. Total fair, just, and reasonable damages to plaintiff Donna Soto and against Alex Jones and Free Speech Systems, add line A and line B, $48 million, initialed by juror number 1. To plaintiff Carly Soto Parisi, A, defamation/slander damages, past and future, $30 million. B, emotional distress damages, past and future, $36 million. Total fair, just, and reasonable damages to plaintiff Carly Soto Parisi and against Alex Jones and Free Speech Systems, add line A and line B, $66 million, initialed by juror number 1. To plaintiff Carlos Matthew Soto, A, defamation/slander damages, past and future, $18,600,000. B, emotional distress damages, past and future, $39 million. Total fair, just, and reasonable damages to plaintiff Carlos Matthew Soto and against Alex Jones and Free Speech Systems, add line A and line B, $57,600,000, initialed by juror number 1. To plaintiff Jillian Soto Marino, A, defamation/slander damages, past and future, $30 million. B, emotional distress damages, past and future, $38,800,000. Total fair, just, and reasonable damages to plaintiff Jillian Soto Marino and against Alex Jones and Free Speech Systems, add line A and line B, $68,800,000, initialed by juror number 1. To plaintiff William Aldenberg, A, defamation/slander damages, past and future, $45 million. B, emotional distress damages, past and future, $45 million. Total fair, just, and reasonable damages to plaintiff William Aldenberg and against Alex Jones and Free Speech Systems, add line A and line B, $90 million, initialed by juror number 1. To plaintiff Erica Lafferty, A, defamation/slander damages, past and future, $18 million. B, emotional distress damages, past and future, $58 million. Total fair, just, and reasonable damages to plaintiff Erica Lafferty and against Alex Jones and Free Speech Systems, add line A and line B, $76 million, initialed by juror number 1. To plaintiff William Sherlock, A, defamation/slander damages, past and future, $9 million. B, emotional distress damages, past and future, $27 million. Total fair, just, and reasonable damages to plaintiff William Sherlock and against Alex Jones and Free Speech Systems, add line A and line B, $36 million, initialed by juror number 1. Roman numeral 2, award of attorney's fees and costs. Instructions. You check yes or no. You check yes, the judge will determine the amount due to the plaintiffs for reasonable attorney's fees and costs and will then award the plaintiffs that amount at a later date. You check no, the judge will award $1 to the plaintiffs for their attorney's fees and costs. We, the jury, find that the standard charge for the assessment of attorney's fees and costs has been met. Yes is checked. Reasonable attorney's fees and costs to be awarded by the judge at a later date, initialed by juror number 1. The last page is juror number 1's signature and the date 10/12/2022, and it is also initialed by juror number 1. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, do you all agree that this is your verdict?
Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Anything further, counsel, before I discharge the jury?
Nothing from the defense, Judge.
All right. Now, as you will recall, when we started the case, I read some preliminary instructions to you, and I now have a brief, and I promise you, brief statement to read to you regarding post-verdict communications. You've now concluded your service as jurors, and jurors often ask whether they can discuss their jury experience with others. Under our law, that decision remains solely with each one of you. If you wish to discuss your jury service with others when you're asked about it, or even if you're not asked about it, you may do so. On the other hand, if you choose not to discuss your jury service with others, you may refuse to do so. The choice is yours. It is your right to decide whether to speak or not speak about your experience. Now, you may be contacted by members of the media seeking comment from you about your experience in this case. You are under no obligation to speak to the media, nor do you need to provide any explanation for not doing so. As you know, highly publicized trials may arouse strong reactions in the public. For this reason and others, you may wish not to publicize your service as a juror. That decision is entirely your own. Now I can deviate from the script. On a personal note, I would like to thank you all for your service and your dedication in serving on this jury, for taking time out of your busy lives. I hope that you found the experience a rewarding one, and I thank you for your service on behalf of the parties, the lawyer, and the court. You are hereby formally discharged from your service as jurors. Thank you again. All right, we are adjourned.
We have been covering breaking news. You were just listening to the verdict for Alex Jones in the Sandy Hook defamation trial. A staggering amount of money was reached here. The conspiracy theorist was ordered to pay $965 million in damages. That's almost $1 billion to the parents who suffered from his false claim that the school shooting was a hoax.
Pretty incredible what we've just witnessed, and we're doing the fast math trying to add this up. The verdict is the second big judgment against the Infowars host for claiming this massacre was staged, and this came in a lawsuit filed by relatives of 8 victims. An FBI agent who responded to the shooting was also a plaintiff in this case, and you may remember a Texas jury back in August ordered Jones to pay $50 million to the parents of another slain child. So let's discuss what we've all just discovered and bring in Jessica Levinson, a CBS News legal contributor and professor at Loyola Law School, while we connect with our correspondent who is in the courtroom, who can also report more on what the reaction is right now. But Jessica, your reaction here to what is close to $1 billion in damages reached by the jury.
These are astronomical figures. The jury was really, really angry, and we can absolutely understand why. What Alex Jones did here is just horrific. And I was wrong when you asked me a few minutes ago, will we see those hundreds of millions of dollars, more than $500 million? And I thought, no, because of how cases typically go. And I think we now know what took the jury so long. One, there's nothing typical about this, thank goodness. And 2, we know the jury really parsed for every different plaintiff. There were different amounts, and we heard this read out to us. First, damages or slander, then emotional distress. Those were the 2 buckets of damages that we had talked about before. Now, the other thing that we need to watch for here is that these are, as I understand it, under Connecticut law, these are compensatory damages. So the punitive damages for defamation is capped in Connecticut, I believe, to the amount of attorney's fees. And you heard that part of the verdict was that the jury said, yes, that's met here, but that there can also be punitive damages with respect to that Connecticut Unfair Business Practices Act. And there will be another hearing, I understand, in a few weeks where the judge makes that determination. So I think based on Connecticut law, this might not even be the end of it. And let's be clear, Alex Jones is very, very wealthy, but a couple of things. One, this should, and I believe will, bankrupt him. And that's part of the point, I think. And I think it's the end of Infowars. And this will really be a case study in how do you try to recover damages, that a damage award that is this high. And we will be looking at wage garnishes. We will be looking at liens. We will be looking at all different ways to try and recover every bit of these verdicts.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. How realistic is it when you're looking at these staggering amounts? You go down the list, 60 million and 60 million, 120 just to one parent. How does a jury typically determine the amount each plaintiff receives? Because as we were listening, it really varied. Some had 25 million, another had 32 million.
Even 32.6 and 43.6. It seems very specific.
Yeah, tell us about that.
It's very specific. And clearly they had a rubric that they were working off of. And as is the case with all jury trials, they had guideposts, right? They had some guide and they had expert testimony to try and determine what is the appropriate amount here. Now, to the question about the exact amounts, could a different jury have found lower amounts? Could they simply have made the assessment that actually the harm that occurred as a result of the defamation and slander, or the harm that occurred as a result of what we heard is, again, past and future emotional distress, well, it wouldn't amount to those levels. Absolutely, but that's why we have juries, right? Juries are supposed to be members of the community, our colleagues, our peers, who look at what happened and say, we think that these are appropriate numbers. Now, these are compensatory figures, but they certainly feel punitive. And on a human level, that feels entirely permissible at this point. We heard a couple of 0.6s, and one has to assume that that was also part of their instructions, where they were making determinations basically on a sliding scale and trying to figure out how much of each category to award each individual plaintiff. But as I said, we certainly know why the jury took more than a few hours, and in fact, I think now into the third day, because they really carefully parsed each plaintiff, and then for each plaintiff, each of those two categories, defamation and slander, and then past and future emotional distress.
I just want to point one thing out that really strikes me as we see the plaintiff's reaction to being awarded tens of millions of dollars effectively, and they look absolutely drained. They look emotionally exhausted. It really shows what they've testified to, the horror that they have been put through again and again by Alex Jones. It's just quite stark to me that anywhere else in the world, when someone finds out tens of millions of dollars are coming your way, there's a sense of joy, but these folks have lost so much already. Jessica, stand by for us, because we want to now show viewers what Alex Jones's lawyer has just said in a response to this gargantuan amount, almost $1 billion Alex Jones now being ordered to pay. Let's see what his lawyer has to say.
Case, candidly, from start to finish, the fix was in this case. We disagree with the basis of the default. We disagree with the court's evidentiary rulings. In more than 200 trials in the course of my career, I've never seen a trial like this. And we very, very, very much look forward to an appeal. The jurors heard that Mr. Jones was responsible for the creation of all the craziness that affected the Sandy Hook world and the Sandy Hook parents. You and I, we all know better. Why the jury was permitted to make a decision based on an incomplete record is a mystery to us. And it's a mystery that we will address in the appellate court. From my perspective, this is as dark and disturbing an experience in court as I have had in a professional lifetime, and that includes cases involving the death of children and the murder of spouses. So we look forward to our prospects on appeal. I congratulate the folks at Koskoff and Beater. My heart goes out to the families. We live in divided times. They've been weaponized and used for political purposes in this country, in my view. And today is a very, very, very dark day for freedom of speech. Thank you.
What did you expect?
Listening there to the lawyer representing Alex Jones. Let's bring in CBS News national correspondent Nikki Batiste, who was inside the courtroom following the jury's decision. It's from watching this far away, Nikki, it was quite remarkable the amount the jury has come up with. What was it like inside the room as their decision was being announced?
I was sitting right next to several of the plaintiffs, several of the victims' families in the courtroom, and everyone was quite emotional. The very first plaintiff to be awarded was Robbie Parker. He received the largest amount, a total of $120 million. His daughter Emily was a victim in the Sandy Hook shooting. When he testified in this trial, it's the first time he's ever spoken about any of this, but he talked about being taunted by Alex Jones, that video of his daughter's funeral where he spoke had been used by Alex Jones to call him an actor. And the testimony throughout this trial, I mean, honestly, some of it is just impossible to even believe. Another family member who lost his son talked about Alex Jones' supporters saying they were going to decimate on his grave. I mean, examples you just can't comprehend. So these families, as they heard their verdicts one by one, were quite emotional. Nicole Hockley was right beside me. I've spoken with her many times over the years. I covered Sandy Hook 10 years ago, and she, when she heard her verdict, she was quite emotional in her eyes, but has been so stoic throughout this and very outspoken, as so many of these families have been. But again, you know, even though this is a $1 billion amount, all of these families still have lost loved ones, children. There's also an FBI agent in this case who was one of the first responders on the scene. So I think still a pretty remarkable outcome. Even though mathematically it makes sense, it's still just incredible to hear.
Incredible.
Megan Errol?
Yeah, Nikki, incredible to hear. And just it makes you really sick when you know that the claims that these families were faking their 6 or 7-year-old's death it's unimaginable. We watched also some of the parents just break down into tears as the verdict was being read. I think one of the dads, David Wheeler, was in front of you. We were watching. What did they have to say after the verdict came in? Did you talk to any of them?
They're still inside. Right now they're meeting with their lawyers. I've spoke with a few of them just casually. As I said, I've interviewed many of them several times over the years, and they'll be coming out shortly. You might see the press gaggle behind me. The lawyers are going to speak, and it's expected some of the parents will, and I'm going to talk to a few of them. But I just put my hand on Nicole Hockley because I could reach over to her, but I ran out of the courtroom to talk to you guys. So we'll hear what they have to say. But again, lots of emotion. And hopefully, I don't think you can ever have justice when you've lost a child or a loved one in this way, especially, but hopefully some sense of justice for them.
And Nikki, before we came to you, we heard from Alex Jones's lawyer, Norm Pattis, who seemed to say that this was a bad day for free speech. You've been following this trial and every twist and turn as Alex Jones tried to defend what he said and did. What is Mr. Pattis talking about here? Why was there an assumption that Alex Jones could lie about such a horrific thing?
Well, I think Pattis as a lawyer is just trying to do his job and argue the First Amendment. But really, this was up to the jury. It wasn't actually up to the jury. The judge deemed Alex Jones was guilty of defamation last year. It was really just up to the jury to decide the damages. But I think this has always been the argument for Pattis and Alex Jones, free speech. But I do want to point out, Alex Jones did testify in this trial. And at one point he said, I'm not going to apologize. I'm tired of apologizing. And I think regardless of where you stand on this case, that's not a way to behave. And I think that Norm Pattis is just trying to defend Alex Jones. But my understanding is, again, I was in the courtroom, but that Alex Jones was live streaming on his show this verdict. He is not here. So people can make their own opinions about where he, about that behavior.
Nikki, please stand by. We want to bring in our attorney, Jessica Levinson. I know you want to weigh in on that, and I'm curious what your take is on what he had to say, calling this a dark day for First Amendment.
Yeah, I teach the First Amendment and I teach defamation law. And let's be clear, the First Amendment is not absolute. You might want it to be, but it is not. And we, for instance, allow for a cause of action called defamation. Defamation punishes people based on speech. And that's part of what this case is about. And I think Nicole is exactly right to point out, this wasn't even about whether or not there should be liability. That was already decided. So in this case, to come in here and say, oh my goodness, this is so inappropriate because it violates the First Amendment, that's a substantive merits-based argument that you would make during a trial. They defaulted that right. This was a default judgment. You can't bring up those claims anymore. And so the idea that somehow the freedom of speech is harmed by this, let's think about what the freedom of speech is actually meant to protect. It's meant to protect a democratic self-government, self-expression, and a marketplace of ideas, all of which are bolstered by a society that allows us to punish defamatory statements. So I'm sorry, but I think there's simply no there when it comes to this First Amendment argument. And again, it's not even appropriate to make it, given that this was just about damages.
And obviously the jury, who heard everything, completely disagree with that assertion. One thing I'm wondering, as you mentioned earlier, that, look, this isn't totally over yet. For example, in Texas, a judge will decide if the $50 million damages verdict should be lowered. Is there any possibility that these amounts, for whatever reason, may be reduced in the days and weeks ahead? And also separately, Alex Jones is live streaming. There are reports that he's saying, they want to scare us. We're not going away. We're not going to stop. Are there things he might say now, today, and in the future that could make it worse for him?
I don't think so, in the sense that this is based on past conduct, right? These are based on statements that he made. He defaulted, so he was not able to contest those statements and what happened as a result of those statements. So what he says later on could give rise to different causes of action. But part of the First Amendment, again, would say he can be punished based on what's in the complaint, but not as things continue to roll later. I mean, that's just despicable, but not necessarily actionable in this particular circumstance. Now, my understanding based on Connecticut law, which of course all of this is state law based, it's different than the law in Texas, is that what we have here are compensatory damages for defamation, for emotional distress, that the jury found with respect to the defamation claim that yes, punitive damages would be appropriate, and with respect to Connecticut's unfair business practice claim, that the judge can make a separate determination on her own with respect to punitive damages, all of which is to say, I think there will be a hearing in a few days or weeks. And it's difficult, of course, to know what a judge will do. But at this point, the reasons for reducing a verdict that were present in Texas, I don't believe are present under Connecticut law.
And Jessica, is there any chance, as we heard from Alex Jones's lawyer, he's looking to appeal? So what does that situation look like?
Sure. He is, of course, looking to appeal because that's in part what you do as an advocate if you think there's a basis to appeal. When I was listening to him, it sounded again like what he was complaining about largely was something based on the merits, which had already been decided, meaning based on whether or not there should be liability, not the cost of how much Alex Jones should pay once we determine that there is liability. Now, we have to wait to see what he says, not in a press conference, but what he actually says in a filing with respect to what are the grounds for appeal here. He made some mention that he thought that there was evidence that was introduced that should not have been introduced. Presumably during the trial, he also made that motion to say, please reconsider. The judge said no. All I can really say to the viewers is that these cases are not typically wholly overturned or completely upended on appeal. Now, again, I'm choosing my words carefully and saying typically, but I wouldn't, if people are watching, to say, will this all just be overturned? I think the answer is no.
Jessica Levinson is our legal contributor. Nikki Batiste, our correspondent, who was in the courtroom as a Connecticut jury decided to effectively award relatives of Sandy Hook victims approximately $1 billion in damages after Alex Jones lied about what took place. If Nikki is still connected to us outside the courtroom, I'm wondering, Nikki, if you can just tell us more about what these families have gone through, and perhaps now if they also want to avoid the media and avoid public attention because they've effectively been traumatized again by Alex Jones, who even today is saying that he's going to continue spreading these falsehoods.
Yeah, I don't think any of us can imagine what these families have gone through unless we're one of them. I mean, some of the family members, there were 8 different families involved in this lawsuit, and the FBI agent, as I mentioned earlier, and each family had several members, so quite a few people. There were probably about, I'd say, 10 to 12 family members in the courtroom. And over the last 10 years, as I've covered this story, there are some family members who have been quite vocal in the media and others who have remained quite private for obvious reasons. But our understanding is that these families just want Alex Jones to be behind them. They don't want to hear his name. They do not want to see him. And they certainly don't want to be harassed by him or any of his followers anymore. I think it's, and remember, this all began within 48 hours of the Sandy Hook shooting. This didn't begin years later. I mean, we're talking about parents trying to bury their children while they're being harassed, sometimes in person, by some of these Jones supporters. So I think they're ready for this to be over.
And Nikki, you point to that this happened so quickly after that devastating day. Can you just kind of walk us through the timeline and talk about, what these parents, had to endure after that? As you mentioned, they were trying to bury their children, and then they start to get harassed, and then it just continued to build over the years.
Yeah, I think for those of us that covered Sandy Hook, it's a time and a day we'll never forget. And I think there was so much media at that time too that a lot of these families are wary of the media, understandably, and just want to be left alone. But the families that have been here have wanted to, I think are happy that we're here. And I do want to point out too that this isn't the first lawsuit that first series of lawsuits. Some of the families also sued Remington, the firearms maker, the assault rifle maker, for marketing their firearms to younger people. And that settlement, which was just last year, was $73 million. And again, a lot of the same parents that I saw here today in the last few days were also there. So, I mean, I can't imagine how difficult it has been to put up a fight like they have. So, you know, I think hopefully now for them, they can move forward and honor the memories of the children and the family members that they lost.
And we heard the judge there say and instruct jurors that they didn't have to explain their decision to anyone. They didn't have to speak to the press. Such a delicate issue and a delicate way to navigate this, because you don't want to re-traumatize the victims here. Nikki, was there anything you picked up as you were sitting in the courtroom and just noticing how the families were carrying themselves or struggling day on day getting through this? As you've said, we can't imagine what it's like to be them. I'm just wondering what you've picked up and what you've noticed.
It appears to me that the family members that have been here throughout are very close. And as each plaintiff's amount was read today in the courtroom, at times several would reach and grab the hand of that particular person, you know, and sort of offer their strength. Again, you know, they've been through this together. So really, we've just seen them together outside, walking out of court, sitting together in court, at times in a private room on another floor, being together, because really only they can understand what this is like and what they've been through. And I will make a note about the jurors. Again, this was just a 6-member jury making these decisions. And I think everyone was surprised how long it took them. But clearly, as the judge pointed out several times, they were really following instructions. And now that we understand each plaintiff got a separate amount, I mean, it was a big task, I think, that they had. And they seem to be incredibly diligent and focused on getting this right.
Nikki, thank you so much. Jessica Levinson as well. Thank you both for helping us just digest all of this. We will be right back.
This breaking story. And of course, Nikki Baptiste will have more coverage tonight on the CBS Evening News. We'll continue to see if there's reaction outside the courthouse and bring that to you as it comes in. You're streaming CBS News.
You ready?
A generation of kids opens up on CBS Reports.
I just want to be like a regular kid.
Their world, their struggles, their voices.
What if I was white?
A lot of people like to call names and make you feel ashamed for being proud of who you are.
Now streaming free speech.
It's evident that there's a wave of censorship across the nation.
Angry partisan debate in schools.
College campuses have not been a place of intellectual diversity for the longest time now.
Are loud voices silencing a generation.
I don't feel comfortable speaking out.
I started to realize I wasn't even discussing stuff in class. I was keeping all my thoughts to myself.
Are the kids all right? Free speech. Now streaming on the free CBS News app. An original documentary from CBS Reports. Tensions rising between a powerful country and a vital island.
The supply of this technology came grinding to a halt. The world would grind to a halt.
Absolutely.
As Taiwan faces threats and aggression.
Taiwan is on the front line, and we understand our responsibility as a democracy. We cannot fall.
CBS News examines whether they can defend themselves.
Putin, Ukraine, China, Taiwan, there are manifestations of the battle between autocracy and democracy. And that is a fight that we're all engaged in.
Defending Taiwan, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
What are the words you would use to describe the Queen?
Kind, caring, and a nice lady.
I'm here for you. America needs drivers.
And we're here to help.
What are you learning from Girls on the Run?
Never give up and to always keep trying.
You can see fire and rescue is up. They're doing wellness checks when people are trapped inside their homes.
We're going to be okay. We're going to make it.
We are so excited, we just can't hide it. Drew Barrymore.
Hi, guys.
Mayor Savino. Ms. Lopez and Mr. Maluma are Reggie.
It's the Fonz.
His name is Henry.
I know.
It's all right.
One question. How often do you consume cannabis?
CBS mornings are, well, everything your morning should be.
Is this a date or are we just friends?
Here we are, your favorite morning people.
CBS mornings, starting at 7.
The third largest railroad union in the United States has rejected a deal from employers renewing the possibility of a nationwide strike that could hurt the U.S. economy.
Now, astute viewers will remember, just a few weeks ago, the Biden administration worked with these unions and the rail companies to come up with an equitable agreement. That deal, though, is contingent on everyone agreeing it and ratifying it. The attorney for the union which rejected this agreement explains why and shares what's on the table for the next round of talks.
I think that what you see is a culmination of trends and events over nearly 2 decades. The railroads have been very, very, very profitable since 2004, but the employees' wage increases have been comparatively minuscule. And as they've taken on increased costs for the health and welfare benefits. And in 2016, the railroad